Welcome to Something to Talk About, which is the daily get together here at the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. And today we're going to talk about the roundabout that's between Poulsbo and Bainbridge Island. It is under construction now, and we all know it because we're seeing it at least disrupt our travel. We are grateful to have a couple of people who have been working on having conversations with Poulsbo about the art that will go in the middle of that roundabout. Suquamish artist Kate Ahvakana and Suquamish tribal emissary J. Robin Hunt are here. And I am looking forward to their presentation, sort of describing how we got where we are and the challenges that that public art can have, and the importance of conversation and keeping conversations open. So I want to thank you both for showing up and giving us a little background and telling us sort of where we are on this conversation between Poulsbo and the public artists that they have engaged and the Suquamish tribe. So I'm going to start with handoff to Robin, who can tell us a little bit about where we are and how we got there. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Robin Hunt. I got involved with this because I think it was last summer or early fall, after I believe it was after the internal investigation by the Poulsbo police about Officer Keller's fatal shooting of Chief Stick, and finding that he didn't violate any police policies. I believe I'm not sure about that, but right around that time, I think that the Suquamish tribe basically from sovereign nation to sovereign city severed its relationship with the city of Poulsbo. Things had been strained since the shooting the year before, and I won't go into all of that background, but I will say that so anyway, Leonard Forsman, who was the chairman of the Suquamish Tribal Council, called me up kind of out of the blue and said, the tribal council has appointed you to be an emissary for the council to find a way forward with the city of Poulsbo. That was my charge. So the first thing I did then was get in touch with the new incoming police chief, and I had been working with a couple of people from the tribe and meeting with the new police chief who was very interested, knew about all the past history and wanted to help rebuild trust with the community. So that was the main focus. But later in December 4th, I've just looked that up. I found the article. The Kitsap Sun published a picture and a story about the new Highway 305 roundabout between Poulsbo and Suquamish at the Johnson Parkway intersection. This is going to have a pedestrian walkway underneath it so people can cross the street safely and help direct traffic around there. The article also showed a picture of the art that was proposed for the roundabout, which was let's see, you can put up, you can put up that first slide, and it shows the vine maples sculpture for the centerpiece, which is done by a steel artisan named Elijah Burnett. And you can see on the wall to the right, the retaining wall to the right, if you look closely, the retaining wall has basically, you can't see that part right now, basket weave kind of sculpture in the background, the Brothers Mountain. But then against the middle of the Brothers Mountain are three Viking figures with three shields. And there was nothing, and the original proposed welcome sign was going to say, "Willkommen all till Poulsbo," which was supposed to be more welcoming. The sign on the north entrance to the town by the big Viking at Thin Hill Road and Viking Way says, "Willkommen till Poulsbo." And in October last fall, the city of Poulsbo had a public forum on diversity, inclusion, and how they could be more welcoming to all. So this putting all in there in Willkommen till Poulsbo was I suppose a way to be more welcoming to all, although it's still in Norwegian. So anyway, that was the proposal and in the newspaper. And the tribe, I had never heard about this. Kate, who had been already commissioned and working with WSDOT for a couple of years and looking for, her fiance has already been commissioned for a Woodland Park zoo art piece, and nobody else had heard about all of this. This just sort of came up from out of the blue, and so the public started writing letters and saying there should be some inclusion or recognition of the Suquamish in the artwork. I checked with Leonard Forsman, who had been in touch with a city councilman, Ed Stern, who had kind of alerted us to this. And so I wrote a letter to the city council saying kind of the same thing. And I think we kind of took Poulsbo by surprise. I think they're paying apparently for the artwork in the middle, even though WSDOT and the feds are paying for the highway parts going around it. And they just figured this is just a Poulsbo, little city of Poulsbo project, and we want to have it be kind of neutral and welcoming to all, and really hadn't, and then thought about whether they should include the Suquamish or anything like that. So I think everybody kind of caught them surprised by how much the rest of the county cared about the project and how much support there was for the tribe, and expectation, very clear expectation, that the tribe be acknowledged for all its ancestral history of the area and stewardship of the area, and for its current, contributions as well. So after the letter, the article in the newspaper in the Sun, that was December 4th, I guess, Kate and I got invited to attend a city council art committee meeting. That happened on January 7th. Kate and I and Elijah Burnett, who was the sculptor for the called Vine Maples in the middle, and the city council, 3 members of their art committee and their engineer and their Kate, do you know what Josh's title is? He's kind of an assistant to the engineer. Do you happen to know what he is? Or
yeah, I think he's one of the engineers as well. I'm not sure if he's the assistant or if he's just a regular engineer.
Right. So we all actually gathered in person, which is a rare thing during this COVID. We gathered in person in the Poulsbo City Council chambers, all 6 feet apart, with strict, instructions, all wearing masks, and we discussed thank you, Reed, this proposal. As you can see, it's got a heron, it's got vine maple leaves on the left, and it's got the external ornamentation is Norwegian rose malling. It's got a boat kind of in the middle, and that vertical line is we learned from Elijah could be imagined as a mast of a boat or a paddle or something, and the water is supposed to represent Liberty Bay. But so what I had asked is, where is the representation of the Suquamish tribe? And then Kate can explain in a second about Coast Salish art. And I just thought that a lot of people thought there should be something incorporated. The city's position at this point was they didn't want to highlight any one particular culture because they didn't want to exclude anybody, they said. So this was supposed to represent the everyone's common love of nature and the beautiful surroundings and mountains and water and flora and fauna and all of that sort of thing. And I tried to explain, and I'll let Kate take over here for just a second, that the whole style of, and I was trying to do this in a tactful way, but the whole style of this sculpture was very European, and it's got rose malling, which is Norwegian, and the fact that it doesn't include any recognition or acknowledgement of the Suquamish tribe, either historically or currently, was kind of like an erasure or a nullification, as if they didn't exist, and that this was not a good thing at all. I didn't say it quite that way, but I'm trying to get that across. So that kind of opened up the debate. And Kate, I think this Well, when do you think, maybe we'll just go to the next meeting after this and you can explain the difference between in native inspired and inspired native. So anyway, the two artists were sent to see what they could figure out together and come back the next week with new designs. Okay, so now Reed, you can flip to Elijah's next one, and not the next, which is what Elijah came back with, the canoe that has the paddlers in it. Yeah, the next, whoops, the next slide. Anyway, and then after that, you can show Kate's two slides of her pictures. And Kate, why don't you go ahead and start explain, you were so good explaining interesting about the difference between native inspired art and inspired native art, and explain the difference between, this is Elijah's sketch. He's added two paddlers to the canoe, made him look a little bit longer canoe. And then Reed, you could perhaps show, yeah, that's Kate's. You go ahead and explain what you put in yours, Kate. Go ahead.
Okay, so this was just a quick sketch of what could be there. It was just because they were asking for kind of a different take on it. And I was trying to explain to the art committee and the mayor and everyone there that by trying to be all-inclusive, they were being exclusive of different voices through art that could be expressed. And that was kind of the opposite of, I think, what the community wanted, and the opposite of what I think why Robin was there, was to give voice to more people of different ethnicities as well, and cultures. So the thing is, there's inspired natives that express their culture through their cultural lens through the art, and then there's native inspired art that is filtered through something that's not their culture, so it's maybe a westernized view or through their own culture. So it has kind of this filter on it that doesn't really express kind of like these indigenous culture views. So Salish art and other forms of indigenous art, and when done by native or indigenous people, it could really expresses kind of like that worldview, and it can still have the same meaning. This beautiful, we appreciate nature, and we view it a certain way and express it a certain way. And I think it's really awesome to have these, different kind of viewpoints on art. And I think what Robin and the tribe were trying to express to Poulsbo was that they wanted, and a lot of community members wanted to see this expression of the indigenous view of their own area expressed in a monumental piece like this. This was just me kind of interpreting Elijah's work on what kind of changes I would make if this was the piece that I had to work with. And this is just like a really quick little sketch on computer. I work primarily on computer now. I went to school for art, and I'm a painter, and I paint most of the time, but I do a lot of online work for the tribe and for a lot of people here. And I do one of the pieces I did that maybe you're aware of is the Suquamish Museum. I did their logo. So I've worked primarily in the computer. So this is kind of like a computer sketch. And I used it's called a dog head or a deer head style of canoe. And that's just what a lot of the Suquamish logos use. It's a very Salish style of canoe. And we also use that type of head on our war canoes as well, our race canoes, which are really cool. And then I thought of every time I think of water and expressing like our connection with it, I always think of salmon and salmon eggs and family. And that's why those are added there. And then Suquamish is really known for their basket weaving. We have beautiful baskets, and we have beautiful baskets in our museum. Historically, we used to go over to Seattle and sell baskets a lot. A lot of museums have Suquamish baskets as part of their collection. A lot of people have baskets as part of their collection. I know that a lot of families in Suquamish keep those baskets passed down from generation to generation. We have a few baskets in our family that we've kept. I know a lot of other families do too. So I was thinking of like, well, you know, just personally, like I was trying to think of what reminds me of Suquamish in this area, and that things that people could maybe drive by and really recognize and connect with and see, not only as maybe visitors, but as a Suquamish resident or a Poulsbo resident as myself. What could I drive by quickly and recognize automatically as something that I can think of that's Suquamish? So those are the pieces I added, just as an example of what could be, or just like, this is, you know, these are things I recommend that kind of remind me of Suquamish and the people. So that's kind of where I was coming at with this kind of like little sketch of just like, oh, you know, you could do this. So that's what that's about.
Great. And also I'd have people notice, and we'll go back to one in just a second, that she took the rose malling ornamentation off the outside left of the circle. The circle is supposed to be sort of reminiscent of a porthole, looking through a porthole. Reed, could you just go back to Elijah's sketch, which is 2 before this one? See, Kate's people are facing toward the bow of the boat, which is to the left. And go back to 2 before that one, Reed. It's got the 2 people in the canoe. Yeah, that one. Okay. So this was Elijah. This was all presented on January 14th, the second art committee meeting, 1 week after Kate and Elijah had first met. And so this is what he had come up with. And you'll see that his people are facing, his boat doesn't really have a recognizable, you know, differentiation between a bow and a stern. His people are facing to the right. And he showed me a picture of an old photograph of 2 Suquamish women in a dog head canoe in the Liberty Bay holding paddles, and they were kind of oriented this way. They were facing up, out from the side because they're getting their picture taken. So it looked to me like what he did, and he may speak to you another week, but looked like he did. He sort of took the outlines of those people and put them in this canoe, but he didn't use the doghead canoe design yet. You'll see that later. And note the ornamentation up on the left. Those little things sticking out like little leaves or flowers on the left, that's the rose malling. So Reed, would you now screen down to the next one after that, back to Kate's? You can see that the rose malling has been removed, and then the much more defined doghead canoe and paddlers and, you know, all of that sort of thing. So then we'll go down then to the one, yeah, that one. This version, and Kate, I'll have you explain some other couple things here in a second. Okay, wait a minute. So before we get to this, Kate, do you want to talk about how, let's go back. I'm sorry. Let's go back to Kate's. Let's go back to Elijah's before Kate. Two before that, Reed. I'm sorry, that one. Okay. Kate, do you want to describe how you Elijah consulted during that first week? I mean, the idea was we'd have the native artists and the original Vine Maples artists collaborate and consult and come up with some sort of, you know, collaborative design, I thought, which would, you know, incorporate Salish elements. And that's not exactly what happened. I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, so just go ahead and say what, you know, say what you want, and also you could explain of where the idea of the Salish Sea and what's the difference between Salish, Coast Salish style or just Suquamish, you know, just in case people don't quite understand where Coast Salish comes from.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'll just do a quick little. If anybody has any questions, obviously feel free to ask. I'll try to do like a wrapped up thing.
Yeah, there is a question about the round ball, about the egg, the salmon egg.
Salmon egg, yeah. So
you want to scroll to the next one? Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Oh yeah, salmon eggs, fertility, children, continued growth of the tribe, continued growth. I mean, it's like kind of like a representation of fertile land, growth, things like that. Kind of resonates with me, like who salmon are and what they mean to us. So that's what the kind of egg is. And plus, I thought it would be cool to have like a glass, because the leaves are supposed to be in glass. So I thought it would be cool to have like a cool glass egg. I don't know if anybody's been to Silverdale. I can't remember what the road is called, but they did a covert reconstruction thing. And then they have these beautiful pillars with these round glass balls, which are salmon eggs. And they have this really beautiful unfolding fern basket design on them. And I thought that was a really smart public art installation that they did over in Silverdale. And it was very, I thought it was really cool. And so I kind of got inspired by that. And I was like, a really cool, like glass salmon egg would be awesome. Like right there with maybe like this steel salmon coming up the water or something. So I always thought that would be kind of like a smart idea to do. And then going back to the question about Coast Salish art. Suquamish is part of the Lashute family, and that goes from down like where Olympia is, and it goes all the way up north and through kind of the southern parts of Canada. And we share kind of like this common language, Lashute. And with that language, we also share our cultural kind of underneath everything. We share the same cultural practices. And then even within that language group, there's like a northern, a southern, and a Suquamish dialect. And then even in Suquamish, we have our own words that we just use here. And so it's all part of this kind of Lashute language kind of connection, cultural connection, and then also artistic expression connection. So all the way from kind of that southern area, and then even in parts of Oregon and through part of the Columbia River Basin, in those kind of areas, there is a little bit of a similar art as well. And so we kind of share this artistic kind of connection. And it's different than, there's a northern kind of Salish art that I think everybody's familiar with, like the totem poles and kind of those box. And it's very like, it's very boxy. There's lots of rules and connections on how they place these different symbols. And then with this kind of southern art, it's a little bit more like water. A lot of the positive and negative kind of play off of each other. And it's really interesting. It's a beautiful art form. And I love how people use it. So I don't have any, I wish I had some examples. I'm sorry about that. Maybe we could have another one read and I could show some examples.
Definitely, you can come back and do that. We would love that.
But because of this connection through our language, our culture, and our art, sometimes it gets a little confused with the northern style art, but we're more southern. So we're like the southern Salish style of art. And we have, instead of totem poles, we have house posts. And those usually tell some stories. We also have welcome figures. So we have these big, large welcome figures that usually kind of in this area that people do. And
we will see one of those from Mukilteo,
yes.
Right?
Yes, I did one of the designs for Mukilteo with that. So that's kind of like the connection of the Salish. And then when I was talking with Elijah about these types of different things and kind of some of our customs, I think he got really inspired, and I think it was kind of new information. And even though he's not comfortable with he did a couple of sketches with some kind of Salish style art design, but then he decided not to go through with it because he felt not comfortable in that style. So then he kind of, he's staying with his own style, but he did get really, I gave him lots of different types of books, from like the Seattle Art Museum, some books that have contemporary Coast Salish art, some other books that just have like examples. And I also gave him a Suquamish Museum, Through the Eyes of Chief Seattle. We have an exhibit book for that. It was a long time ago that we had that in the original Suquamish Museum, and it was up for years. I have a couple of those that I gave him just with the information about Suquamish in general. So he went through all of those books and kind of came up with the new kind of canoe style on his art, but he kind of kept with his old, he's got like his own feel for it. And even though you see it kind of still like flat, it's very like curvy. Like those branches and those leaves are going to come towards you, and it's going to curve. And then the water in the canoe kind of curves back the other way. So it's kind of like this globe kind of look to it. Can't really see it in the sketch, but he's got like a little 3-dimensional little one that he did. And then in some of the renderings that Josh did, you can kind of see it. Yeah. Kind of see it there where the leaves are going to come forward and that water is going to go back. And so we talked a little bit about just kind of like cultural stuff. I gave him lots of books that I love to use, because I go around and talk to schools and students a lot. That part of my job is we do some outreach, and obviously we talk to our own kids about art and culture and the language and how it's all connected. And I use a lot of those books as references, and kids look at them a lot. So I'm used to using those as kind of examples of not only the art, but they've got like lots of essays within these different books about the culture and how they're connected and the language. It's all very like really cool and interesting. And so Elijah went through that, and he kind of got inspired by it. And I think that's why he chose to put the people in the canoe with the paddles up. I was explaining to him, and I think everybody at the meeting, because they were asking about paddles. And I said, if you put your paddle up, and this is something that we still do today on canoe journeys when we travel, is we put our paddles up when we pull into anybody's territory to let them know that we come in peace. Because a long time ago, we were warring tribes, and we would war with each other a lot. And to show that we were, because you can't really tell who's coming in, right? On the water and on the beach. So we would put our paddles up, and we would do circles in front of the beach to let them know that we came in peace and that we were here for in a good way. So so I was explaining to him about that and what that meant. And so that's why he chose to have the people with the paddles up too.
Kate, and Reed, can you toggle back to Kate's drawing just before that? And Kate, can you explain the difference in the style of hat that you put in your canoe and the hats in Elijah's canoe? You were trying to make it readily recognizable as Coast Salish and Suquamish and all that. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, so like a really long time ago, I don't know, everybody's seen that really like iconic photo of Chief Seattle, and he's sitting there with his hands in his lap, and he's got his hat on his knee, and it's a dome hat. Those were traditionally here. That's the type of hat we used to use. There's one in the Suquamish Museum if you ever want to look at one. They're very cool. They actually are double woven. So there's a weave on the outside, and then there's a weave on the inside, and they're double woven hats. They're really nice, and they're very finely made. A lot of people don't make those specific hats anymore because it takes a lot of time and material. And usually today for canoe journeys, and for like, I wear mine all the time when outside, like if I'm doing any gardening or outside work, I'll wear my hat, or if it's just sunny, I'll put my hat on. And you can see kind of like that flat top, and kind of it goes out. Those are the types of hats that a lot of people sell and use today on canoe journeys, and it just keeps the sun out. It's when it gets wet, the cedar will expand, and it'll be rainproof if you've woven it really good. And then when it's dry out, the cedar will kind of condense up, and you'll have like little kind of air holes so that the wind can go in. It's really interesting, cedar is, and it's fun to work with. My husband, my boyfriend, he is a cedar weaver. I taught him how to do his first cedar hat, and now he's done like over 70 hats, and all different types and kinds. So, I mean, that was just, I just did that style because that's recognizably what we use today. You can tell, you know, oh yeah, there you go. You can see kind of the flat and then it goes out. And that's a more northern style, but we've kind of adopted it, you know.
Isn't your mom, Kate, a master weaver as well? Mostly baskets. I don't know what else, but just.
My mom does a lot of clothing, and she's done like different shows with clothing, and then she's also carved a little, and she's got some in the National Museum.
And your dad is
my dad's an artist. He's a Nubiak, so he's a lot way northern, right? So I don't know if anybody knows where Barrow, Alaska is, but that's where my dad's from.
Yeah. Okay. So now we'll move on. So Reed, you can have the picture that comes after the one with the salmon egg, the one that you would have for. This is the one that Elijah did with the dog head canoe. It comes right after the one with the salmon egg. Let's see, it's number 7, I think. Okay, the 7th one. Anyway, so the one we've been looking at a lot was the picture, the sketch that Elijah produced after all the, that one. This is the one that was presented at the City Council meeting for approval on February 7th of this year. In the interim between the January 14th meeting that Kate and I and Elijah had with the meeting with all the folks from the City Council and the Art Committee, et cetera, and the City Council meeting on February 7th. Actually, it was, I think it was on the 7th or the 4th. It was the 14th. I think I got my 2 meetings mixed up. I think it's the 14th. But anyway, that's when all the letters from the public came in, some directly to the mayor, some to the City Council, some to the Kitsap Sun, and basically saying that we need to recognize the Suquamish. So Elijah then produced this picture, and that has the more dog head prow on the left. You can see it compared to the previous symmetrical boat. This one now has differentiated bow and stern. So on the left, there's this protruding sort of an outline or silhouette of a dog head, Salish dog head prow, and the stern is a little bit more squared off, more like those kinds of canoes too. The problem I had with this canoe, though, is he kept the 2 occupants in this very same position as he had in the earlier sketches when he had a symmetrical boat, when you really, didn't know which was the bow or the stern. I always assumed in the earlier boats that they were proceeding to the right, going out of the porthole circle. But so here in this particular sketch, since he kept the occupants still the same position as before, but now the dog head prow is on the left and the stern is on the right, it looks like the 2 occupants are facing backwards toward the stern. And even though you row a rowboat backwards, they don't row this kind of canoe backwards. And I know, as I said before, that the photograph that Elijah started with had the 2 women, the women in that canoe were facing out just because they were getting their picture taken. They weren't really paddling. But the sketch that Kate had produced, as we saw before, she definitely has the 2 paddlers are facing to the left, and they're holding their paddles such that you just know they're facing toward the bow of the boat, and they still have their paddles aloft in a sign of peace, but there's no question which way they're facing. But in this one, they're facing backwards. And I was trying to be tactful, but I kept asking and trying to get the head of the art committee of the city council or somebody to get a new sketch before it went to the city council's meeting to vote on it, because it just looked kind of strange to me to have these people facing backwards. And I was told that this was just a concept, it's a work in progress, that'll be revised. So this is the version that went to the city council, and Ed Stern, one of the council member who'd been behind the scenes kind of making sure everything was happening, and I was a little more overt at that meeting too. Kimmy's letter she had read hers the week before on February 7th. And so at least at the city council meeting, when they voted on this sketch, they had a caveat that the two, when I said the paddlers were backwards, nobody else seemed concerned about this. I kept thinking, well, just being strange. But anyway, they did say that the two paddlers would be reoriented in a future version. I still was uncomfortable not having more of a final version going forward, but that was the way it was done. So before we get, and then you can go to the next slide to show the welcome, the welcome sign. So this now says, instead of, and I'll let Kate explain a little more about this too, because she's been consulting on this. Instead of the Willkommen Altil Poulsbo, I don't know if this is the final, but anyway, now it's going to be in English. Elijah removed the vertical paddles from the sign, and now it's going to be in English. And Kate, why don't you explain what your conversation has been with one of the assistant engineers and the people who are expert in the chute seed, and what you've been trying to work on to make sure this is accurate.
Well, I've just been kind of like the go-between, but I've been working with Josh, one of the engineers, and been talking to Cassie. She's one of our linguistic, she works in our language program, and she went to Oregon and worked with one of the top 12 chute seed linguistic teachers, Zeke. And so she's really super wonderful. I've taken a couple of her classes, and she's really good with the language. And she has been working with Leonard and also Dennis Lurich, which is one of our archaeologists. So they've been working on place names. So they've been looking at Poulsbo and what is the place name. That one on this specific one isn't correct. In I believe she said that you say it's Chochotlats is the word for, and it's Maple Grove. And there's no land of, because there's not there's a couple things you have to put before the name to make it land of. And so Chochotlats is just Maple Grove. So Poulsbo was known as just Maple Grove. So, and I was just wanting to get clarification from the language department, and since she's been working with Dennis Lurich and Leonard and place names, they've been going through old, records that people have been collecting, and maps to make sure that this was correct. So they sent that along to Josh, so that will be changed and made correct. That way we don't get anything wrong, because I would hate to have like some sort of misspelling or miss anything on a sign that's going to be there for a while.
Reed, now I think we'll just skip over the declaration for right now, because I can send that to people. And yeah, go to Kate. Kate, could you explain how you came to be commissioned to create the welcoming figure for the Mukilteo Ferry, and what the meaning is behind the welcoming figure and all of that?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting project. Phil Narte, he works for WSDOT, and this has been his baby for a very long time. I think he said up to 10 to 15 years he's been working with WSDOT, and especially
which is the Department of Transportation, right?
Yes,
we've heard it a few times. Great.
Yes, sorry. Yes, Washington State Department of Transportation. And so WSDOT, this specific site, and I apologize for not knowing the whole history, but there was something with it because it was something else, and then they wanted to put the ferry terminal on top. So there was lots of like environmental issues that they wanted to make sure were correct. And there was actually something within using that part of land, because that's where the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855 was signed by Suquamish and other tribes at the time. So that's the actual site of it there, where the Mukilteo Ferry terminal is. So Tulalip, Suquamish, and I believe some other tribes have some claim over that land. I believe it's mostly in the Tulalip area, but then so Philip worked with the tribes themselves. So, and then the tribe did the finding of the artists within their own tribe. So this was a very interesting thing where it was this government to government kind of working, state government working together, these sovereign pieces working together. And then the tribe contracted me to do some design work for the outside of the ticket station. The picture you see now is the female welcome figure, and then on the other side is the male welcome figure. And then this one is the Hik Siab, the very high class woman. And then you'll see like on the top of her hat, and I did, for these ones, I did do kind of the more dome shape that you can recognizably see in the Chief Seattle photo. I did that on purpose. And then you'll see like this kind of like unfolding fern basket design on her hat. And that represents like new and continued growth. And this symbolizes the continuity of our cultural growth. And traditionally, women will hold that power of holding that culture and to pass it on for future generations. And her hands are up in this kind of welcoming pose that a lot of welcoming figures have. This is also kind of a representation of how we say, thank you for holding up the culture, or we agree with what you're saying, or we appreciate the work you're doing. It's kind of like one of those kind of all over, you could ask 100 people and then 100 people have a different way of explaining what that really means, right? But it kind of all goes together within that kind of more welcoming thank you holding up. And then you'll see that she has this spindle whorl design on her, kind of in the middle of her, and that represents kind of like this duality. So there's like light and dark, female and male, kind of this duality kind of, and it's around her stomach because she can create both male and female. And like a lot of now people don't want to connect to a gender. So it's kind of like this duality of this life. And then you'll see lots of basket designs, water designs. These are kind of the treasures of our culture, these symbols. And so I wanted to add many of them to kind of represent past, present, and future. So I did a lot of things in threes to kind of represent that. And then the water at the bottom is just, water is kind of the very feminine kind of connection. And we connect femininity with water a lot. And so I kind of added that on the bottom of hers to represent kind of that connection with the female power. There's another one, her kind of, her other half is the male figure. I don't think we have a photo of the male figure.
Yep, I didn't, it was on the other side of the toll booth and I couldn't take a picture of that. Yeah. So,
but he's got a lot of things to him as well. And a lot of his stuff kind of has more of a connection with the actual treaty itself. He's got like a dance apron, and all the X's on his dance apron represents all the X marks that all the tribal leaders had put on that document. And then he also has fish on his hat. And the fish is part of those retained treaty rights that we've always had and continue to have, is how we feed our people is through the fish, but it's not only about feeding our people, it's also taking care of the water so that the fish can live. So it's that continued kind of representation of the past, how we took care of the water and the fish, and it took care of us, the present of what we put into taking care of the water and fishing rights, and then the future, we want to keep those fish healthy so that the future people of our tribe can eat fish. It's part of that process. And then on the bottom of the male figure, there's a lot of water representation as well, representing the different waters that all of these different tribes traveled from to come together to the Mukilteo site for the Point Elliott Treaty signing in 1855. So it had kind of all these different kind of symbols that I used that kind of have these deeper meanings.
Okay. Reed, could you quickly just scroll back to the proclamation? I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll just explain while you put up the pages, and people can kind of listen and read at the same time, and then we'll have a few questions. At the end of the city council's meeting on the 14th, when they unanimously adopted the doghead canoe with the paddlers are going to be reoriented. They also signed, all city council members unanimously agreed to sign a proclamation that Mayor Becky Erickson of Poulsbo had put together. And if you read through it, there's a lot of heartfelt thought in there. And it kind of shows that this whole discussion about the art in the roundabout became kind of a metaphor for and a step forward for the healing that is going to be hoping and moving towards between the city of Poulsbo and the Suquamish tribe. And the fact that the Poulsbo City Council and Mayor switched their the focus of this piece of art in response to the public outcry and included the Coast Salish art and the Suquamish tribe. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention. So on the retaining wall to the right, which originally had the 3 Vikings, the city council also had previously voted to remove the Vikings and the shields from that wall. So now it's going to be the blank at the Olympic Mountains, and the city of Poulsbo has $25,000. They are going to dedicate, and they're going to commission an original, genuine piece of native art for that wall. Hasn't happened yet. This is a huge change from what you saw originally proposed at the beginning, and it's just to me, in my view, from where we started and where we have ended up, it's symbolic of the two communities, which are still kind of estranged, but really in the long run wanting to rejoin and be cooperative neighbors and collaborators. And so this has been a huge project with all the community and everybody weighing in. And I got to tell you that at least the city council in Poulsbo, that working with them, and Kate, you can confirm if you did, that the people involved, I don't think that they were purposely leaving out the Suquamish. I think that they thought, because of the vine maple theme and the maple grove and the they'll come until all, and they didn't have any Suquamish people in the committee, but they really thought that they were being inclusive. So that was their intention. There was never any malice in there to keep the Suquamish out. It's just a different, a different point of view or lens, as you would say.
Yeah,
so,
I do think that you do point to an important lesson, that you can't be inclusive if you don't have conversation.
Right.
And so I applaud the tribe and Kate and you, Robin, for making the step to allow that conversation to occur. Without that, it wouldn't have. We wouldn't be where we are today. So, and
we also, though, wouldn't be where we are today if the people of Poulsbo, the city council people in Poulsbo, weren't open-minded and open heart to. I mean, I've worked with other groups, and you try to do something like this, and the defenses go up. They didn't do that. They were kind of surprised, and took a while, but they were still. Sometimes we had to be a little more pushy, but they still in the end. But the thing is, it was a difficult process, but they hung in there and they reached a better solution. So to
to borrow a little welcoming motion, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and telling us about that. I want to leave time if there are questions or comments that people might want to make. You can. I'm sorry, Kate. Go right ahead.
I'll do a quick little wrap up. I think that a lot of the change that opened up the eyes of Poulsbo City Council too was all the letters that came in and people writing in and calling in. And I think it was really kind of like this engaged community to begin with that kind of opened the door for me and Robin to even sit down and have a conversation. Like, I think it had a lot to do with the engaged community, the willingness to open up and listen to Robin, and then Robin pulled me in and myself. So I think that's kind of like all of those things combined, I think really brought about like this really cool change where the artist listened to me and he interpreted what he could in his own style. And I think he did a pretty good job. Like, that's more than what was there before. And I think the shift from the Vikings to slotting a spot for Salish art and actually putting money behind where their words are, they've put, I think it was $25,000 towards that. That's pretty good too. I mean, that's a really good end thing that we came up with, and they've voted on it, so it's there, and they just have to figure out how to pick an artist. So I think that's a really big, huge move, and I think it started with the community.
Right.
And that was it.
Thank you very much. Yes. Very eye-opening, and I appreciate you both taking the time today to walk through this. Are there comments or questions? I do see that in the chat, Karen noted that details matter. Thank you for making sure that the final product is accurate. That would be a sore spot if it were not.
Yeah.
Well, it's not quite accurate yet.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
We want Elijah to consult with Kate further before it gets forged. We're working on that part now.
And then a testament to the power of sharing, Barbara Golden mentioned. Thank you both for doing that. Kimmy, yes.
I just wanted, first of all, to acknowledge the wonderful work that these two have put in the way that they did it, with kindness and just respect. And really, when I read that proclamation, I was stunned. It really felt like there had been a sea change. And, you know, the art it just became a vehicle through which the whole community could kind of, you know, process. And I also think it's a lesson for all of us, because we're all coming from a cultural lens. And so we all need to inform ourselves of that fact, that how we view aesthetics and how we view language really is driven by our own cultural experiences. So in order to change that perspective, we really need to inform ourselves as much as we can. And I am surprised that so few people on Bainbridge Island are members of the Suquamish Museum. It is a wonderful resource. And I brought down my magnet. So Kate, did you do this when I joined in 2017? Wow, yep. Awesome. I that one up.
I worked at the Suquamish Museum as an intern, and they were doing their new logos because the new building. Mm-hmm. So I helped move everything to the new building when I was interning, and the new logos that they had their designers do, I was like, no. So I just whipped that out. And I said, hey, how about this instead? So then it got approved. So
excellent.
It's one of those moments I was in the right place at the right time.
You know, basket weaving is so central. And again, people don't understand, you know, I don't think people appreciate in our area that we have a living, one of the finest Suquamish basket weavers named Ed Carrier. And he has been selected as the artist in residence for Blodell. So he will be there for the month of March, and in collaboration with Barn, he'll be giving workshops. So, boy, if you've never heard him, he is the only presenter we had at the Poulsbo Rotary Club where the last sentence he said, everybody stood up and clapped like crazy. And it wasn't, he's not what you would think, like one of those grab you by the neck, speakers, but it was so beautiful because clearly he was so humble about his talent, and then we could see it. And then people may not know, but he was featured at the Burke Museum opening. The Suquamish and the Coast, they have their stamp in that museum. So if you've never been to Burke Museum, you need to get there too, because, the Pascos and, the Carriers and, just the collaboration between Daniel Crows and Ed Carrier, and that whole history is all woven in there, and we're sitting on it, and there are neighbors. So anyway, I hope just both of your efforts in kind of, shifting the sand so we can all be better neighbors is another thing too.
Tom, did you have something you wanted to say? I see your microphone is open.
Yes, I did. I just wanted to compliment and commend Robin and Kate for the program, but I also want to go beyond that and mention Leonard Forsman again. Leonard, I got here almost 20 years ago and met Leonard when he was before he was chairman, and I've worked with him and watched him and have seen the difference that one person can make in, if they are capable and they put their mind to it and work at it. And I think, what you're seeing up there now is a direct result of his very, very competent efforts.
Yeah.
I just want to compliment the whole tribe for what they've been able to do.
I second that.
And I second it's been said a couple times, the wonderfulness of the Suquamish Museum and there's no reason you can't join and go.
And it's very inexpensive to join too. It's probably one of the best deals you'll ever have.